Let's just dive right into this explainer. We're going to deconstruct how a shopping app that literally appeared out of nowhere back in 2022 managed to completely dismantle Western retail. I'm talking, of course, about Temu. Backed by the Chinese tech giant PDD Holdings, this thing went from absolute zero to the most downloaded shopping app on the entire planet in just about 18 months. Crazy, right? But how exactly did they pull off this unprecedented scale so incredibly fast? Well, to figure that out, we've got 5 key areas on our roadmap today. 1, the dopamine shopping machine. 2, the billion-dollar trade loophole. 3, the true cost of cheap. 4, the hidden data toll. And finally, number 5, the regulatory reckoning. So let's start right at the beginning, the user experience. Retail analyst Neil Saunders actually hit the nail on the head when he said, Temu is as addictive as sugar. Because honestly, when you open that app, you're not just browsing. You are stepping into a chaotic, meticulously designed environment. The interface, those rock-bottom prices, they're engineered to give you a constant, immediate dopamine hit. Which brings us to section 1, the dopamine shopping machine. This really dives into what experts call the psychology of gamification. It's basically the art of turning a boring, everyday shopping trip into a game that you just can't put down. And it all starts with the basic dopamine loop. First, you get a stimulus, like say, unlocking a surprise flash deal. That triggers a rush of dopamine in your brain, making you feel fantastic. Next comes the reinforcement stage. You inherently desire to relive that thrill. And finally, boom, habit formation. You actively seek out that stimulus again. Temu is essentially designed to keep you locked in this exact cycle of anticipation and reward. So how do they keep this loop running? They leverage intense social proof and scarcity cues. You know exactly the tactics I'm talking about. Spinning wheels for instant discounts, ticking countdown timers for free shipping, and those live purchase feeds telling you exactly what other people are buying right this second. By throwing stock alerts like only 3 left right in your face, the platform triggers this massive fear of missing out. It practically forces rapid decision-making so you literally don't even have time to second-guess what's in your cart. All right, let's move on to section 2, the billion-dollar trade loophole. Because the structural secret behind those unbelievable $199 prices, it actually has very little to do with traditional retail efficiency and everything to do with a massive, massive gap in international customs law. That loophole is called the de minimis exemption. It's a U.S. trade provision that was originally designed for tourists bringing home souvenirs. It allows packages valued under $800 to enter the country completely duty-free. So by shipping directly from factories in China straight to your doorstep and keeping individual order values well below that $800 threshold, Temu just avoids import taxes entirely. It's a staggering regulatory advantage that traditional Western retailers just simply do not have. And this exemption is exactly how Temu, along with its rival Shein, managed to just utterly dominate global shipping. According to a U.S. House Select Committee report, these 2 companies alone likely account for more than 30% of all global de minimis shipments entering the U.S. daily. I mean, we are talking about hundreds of millions of packages every single year just slipping right past standard customs scrutiny and tariffs. To really put that into perspective, the contrast is absolutely staggering. Back in 2022, traditional retailers like Gap paid $700 million in tariffs. H&M, they paid $205 million. Meanwhile, Temu legally bypassed these costs, paying exactly $0 in import duties on their direct-to-consumer shipments. 0. When you don't have to pay the massive fees that everyone else does, well, it's pretty easy to undercut the entire market. But that brings us to section 3, the true cost of cheap. Because to really understand how these prices exist, we have to take an objective look at the direct human cost that actually makes these factory direct models possible in the first place. An undercover investigation by Channel 4 looked into the suppliers fueling these fast fashion platforms, and they uncovered some pretty severe conditions for workers. We're talking about grueling quotas that demand up to 500 garments a day. The base pay? Roughly 0.271 per item. That's literally fractions of a single cent. Add in docked pay for the first month and massive fines for any mistakes, and you start to realize something. The impossibly low prices you see on the app directly reflect these incredibly harsh economic realities on the factory floor. Furthermore, a U.S. House Select Committee report found that Temu conducts essentially no audits to ensure compliance with the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. In fact, the committee even found items explicitly advertising Xinjiang cotton listed right there on Temu's platform. The report noted that Temu relies mostly on boilerplate supplier agreements, and they don't expressly prohibit third-party sellers from listing products originating from a region that is heavily tied to severe forced labor concerns. Now let's pivot to Section 4, the hidden data toll. Moving beyond the physical supply chains, we really need to examine the digital side of this equation, the invisible currency that's fueling Temu's parent company, PDD Holdings. Industry reports have raised some severe cybersecurity red flags. Right now, Temu is facing a class action lawsuit on Australia that alleges extensive tracking and the use of spyware. The suit claims the app collects biometric and financial data way beyond what is actually necessary. And this is coming on the heels of a really troubling history where PDD Holdings' domestic app, Pinduoduo, was actually removed from the Google Play Store after versions were found to contain malware. Many experts suggest that Temu's e-commerce operations often just run at a loss because the real long-term value is the massive amounts of consumer data they're harvesting. Okay, let's head into our final layer, Section 5, the regulatory reckoning. Because the walls are finally beginning to close in as global regulators and trade laws start to catch up with the platform's explosive growth. Regulators are definitely taking serious action now. The European Union actually just slammed Temu with a $232 million fine under the Digital Services Act. The European Commission stated that the company failed to properly assess risks and stop the sale of illegal and unsafe products on its platform. Now, Temu has pushed back, calling the fine disproportionate and stating that they are continually strengthening their platform governance. But the regulatory scrutiny is clearly intensifying all over the globe. Meanwhile, over in the U.S., the government has made moves to end the de minimis exemption for Chinese goods. With this huge structural cost advantage collapsing, the impact has been severe. U.S. app downloads dropped by 40% in the first quarter of 2025. And in response to these massive tariff pressures, Temu's astronomical U.S. meta ad spend fell 10% year-on-year. This has forced the company into a total recalibration of its global logistics strategy, including a sudden shift toward building out local warehouses. The immediate fallout of those regulatory shifts, it's undeniable. Temu's share of Google Shopping ad impressions completely plummeted from around 40% to exactly 0% in April 2025. Yeah, 0. Once that tariff loophole began to close, their aggressive loss-leading marketing strategy just hit a sudden and massive brick wall. So we've seen the gamified facade designed to keep your brain hooked. We've explored the massive trade loopholes that crush domestic retail competition, the stark labor realities on the factory floor, and the very real data risks hiding right there in your phone. And it leaves us with one vital question to consider before you make your next purchase. Is that quick dopamine hit really worth the hidden cost? Think about that the next time you see one of those countdown timers ticking away. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning what's behind the screen.